happen. We have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup, and I just flipped my coat off, but it is freezing cold in this studio, and we are going anyway.
We are going anyway, and we are not going to mention Jodie Foster.
Really?
This week.
How disappointing. I could talk about that for days.
Got a little pushback last week.
I do have a question, though. Has any bigger star come out?
Oh. Bigger star than Jodie Foster, two-time Academy Award winner.
Exactly.
Oh, it depends on how you define big.
Well, in just continuing to give her some credit, that crossed my mind.
Okay, well then we did mention her.
Let's look at this week's news. President Obama, who you may have seen get re-inaugurated, made history with a ringing endorsement of gay rights in his second inaugural.
Historic, quite something.
Although the transgender and transsexual community is upset because they weren't specifically mentioned.
Okay.
Although some say the mention of Stonewall was by implication.
There you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll discuss further.
Well, we've told you that the Supreme Court in March is going to hear two cases relative to same-sex marriage, the Prop 8 case and the DOMA case. And this week, the opponents, the supporters of those two things, they support Prop 8, they want to keep DOMA, they filed their briefs, including the House Republicans citing the uniqueness of heterosexual tendencies as a reason for limiting marriage to sex-discordant couples.
And those weren't good tendencies. We'll get detailed. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives in Rhode Island is moving to pass a marriage equality bill this week.
And marriage equality may get some publicity in the run-up to the Super Bowl.
We made a mistake last week in our Mountain States region. We said Jeanette Rankin was from Wyoming, but really she was from Montana. We'll show you some pictures.
Okay. Heterosexuality is still a big problem in the military.
And religion had some problems this week, too. A new study finds that half of gay and bisexual men who use apps like Grindr to find sexual partners do not use condoms for anal sex. I'm not sure I think that's a headline, but it is a new study.
The second highest grossing documentary of 2012 had some gay themes. We'll tell you what it was.
The first one had anti-Obama themes.
Yes, it's true.
And we'll review the Broadway revival of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof with Scarlett Johansson. Okay. But first we start with our president.
We start with the inauguration. Which is, this really was historic.
It was.
Presidents have alluded to us in the past, but you never know what they were talking about.
Not always in positive terms. Some of them were about condemning us. But I have to say one thing. I was not home when the inauguration was on, and I was driving home that afternoon and listening to the inaugural speech, and I did not find it particularly impressive. But then I went home and I sat down and watched a rerun on C-SPAN and really focused on it and looked at it, and it really impressed me that time. So for those of you who have not actually sat down and looked at it, I really recommend you do.
And we're going to show you a clip from it, and of course that's the reason you voted for Nixon. Well, people who listened to the debate between Kennedy and Nixon on the radio thought Nixon won, and people who watched it on television thought Kennedy won.
I certainly was alive at the time, but not quite old enough to vote in that election. But people were amazed by what Obama had to say. It was a very stirring, forthright speech asserting this communitarian, we're all in this together.
Progressive values.
Yep.
He said he was going to protect basically Social Security and Medicare, which we were worried about. Is he going to do that? Is he going to go to bat for us on this kind of stuff?
And that we make progress by all moving forward together, as opposed to the right-wing attitude, which is sort of, I'm staying home with my gun, and protecting myself against the government and the black helicopters.
Oh, right.
And it's all about me, and against this, we're all working together.
These two strains in American history, which seem to come into conflict from time to time, like every day.
250 years or so.
Yeah.
But there were a couple of things that people mentioned about Obama's speech, and so we thought we'd take the whole chunk of the speech that included them and run all of that so you could see it in context. So here is your president.
We, the people, declare today that the most evident of truths, that all of us are created equal, is the star that guides us still. Just as it guided our forebears through Seneca Falls and Selma and Stonewall, just as it guided all those men and women, sung and unsung, who left footprints along this great mall, to hear a preacher say that we cannot walk alone, to hear a king proclaim that our individual freedom is inextricably bound to the freedom of every soul on earth. It is now our generation's task to carry on what those pioneers began. For our journey is not complete until our wives, our mothers, and daughters can earn a living equal to their efforts. Our journey is not complete until our gay brothers and sisters are treated like anyone else under the law. For if we are truly created equal, then surely the love we commit to one another must be equal as well. Our journey is not complete until no citizen is forced to wait for hours to exercise the right to vote. Our journey is not complete until we find a better way to welcome the striving, hopeful immigrants who still see America as a land of opportunity. Until bright young students and engineers are enlisted in our workforce rather than expelled from our country. Our journey is not complete until all our children, from the streets of Detroit to the hills of Appalachia to the quiet lanes of Newtown, know that they are cared for and cherished and always safe from harm. That is our generation's task.
That's our task.
To make these words.
Are you done, Barack?
No, he's not, but we're going to encourage you to go online to watch the whole speech.
Watch the whole speech. I mean, but it was, to hear it forthrightly spoken, that,
well, it is astonishing that this is the first time anybody in an inaugural speech has used the word gay. And these speeches are saved and looked at historically. People go back and read inauguration speeches, and so this will have an historical impact.
As soon as he was done, this was one of the big things people were commenting upon.
I almost didn't come in to do this show today because the mainstream media has covered this so thoroughly. I thought, what could we say that they haven't already said?
Well, what we can say is thank you, Mr. President.
Yes.
And let's talk about what we need to do in order to fulfill that dream.
Now, there was some nitpicking, I'll call it that, but criticism, certainly, of the fact that he just said gay. He didn't say LGBT, he didn't spell it out.
Well, it's sort of like gay. That Gay USA show.
Exactly. Who are we to criticize?
Exactly.
But others took his reference to Stonewall as an inclusive thing, but you have to be pretty hip, I guess, to understand that.
In this country, you have to be pretty hip to figure out what Selma and Seneca Falls are, but we know. But not everybody knows.
Out gay Cuban poet Richard Blanco gave a terrific poem.
Moving.
It was he talked about his Cuban family and heritage in that. He was not explicit about being gay, although was
rainbow.
Yeah.
He mentioned the rainbow, which we own. Whenever you see a rainbow, it's a gay rights demonstration from God.
But that also you can see online, and I recommend it because it really was a wonderful poem.
Excellent.
And then the pastor got up to give the benediction.
This is Reverend Luis Leon, who himself was born in Guantanamo. He's from St. John's Episcopal Church there, I believe in...
I thought it was Blanco was born in Guantanamo. Were they all born in Guantanamo?
This is what I have for Luis
Okay.
Leon.
Okay. Anyway, he's the one who replaced the anti-gay pastor who, unlike 4 years ago, we made disappear quite quickly. Giglio. So Leon got up there. We were just happy to have a progressive minister there, but then
from a gay inclusive church.
Exactly, across from the White House, and the church that the president and first lady went to that morning for the traditional.
They got a double dose of Luis Leon.
Right. So here's what he had to say from the podium.
We pray for your blessing, because without it, we will see only what the eye can see. But with the blessing of your blessing, we will see that we are created in your image, whether brown, black, or white, male or female, first-generation immigrant American, or daughter of the American Revolution, gay or straight, rich or poor.
Thank you very much for that,
Exactly.
Reverend.
And it's nice to be mentioned first, of course. Then
mean among the rich and poor?
Yeah. And what we didn't mention about Obama's reference is that in fact it was a support of marriage equality.
Oh yes, he said that if we are truly created equal, then surely the love we commit to one another must be equal as well. There was a nice picture of Antonin Scalia scowling while he was saying that.
Well, a lot of talk, again, among the mainstream media about whether this was Obama's lobbying the Supreme Court, all of whom were sitting there.
Not allowed to lobby the Supreme Court. Yes, you are. You can lobby them if you want to. They don't generally listen.
But they were confronted directly by his reference to marriage equality a couple of feet away from them.
On a substantive level, however, and we're going to talk about the Supreme Court cases, there is a move on to get President Obama and his administration to weigh in on the Prop 8 case and file amicus briefs in that case.
They're avoiding answering that question at the moment, but again, we'll go on to
the President
that.
believes in states' rights.
Look, I'm happy to have him say this in front of the actual Supreme Court. To me, that is the important way to do it.
And then in the inaugural day parade, we have a picture of this. There was a sort of a civil rights float there. There it is. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. A quote from Dr. King, and it was his birthday this week, that day actually. And on the far right of the picture there is a picture of Jean Manford, who just passed away the previous week, marching in the 1972 Pride Parade with her son Morty and her daughter, and sticking up for her gay son. That picture is what they chose to put on the float among a bunch of other civil rights images. And we're in favor of integration.
We are. And we were integrated into the crowd on the podium. Of course, Senator Tammy Baldwin was there, along with various gay members of Congress, I think. But also Chad Griffin, the president of the Human Rights Campaign, was on the podium, and the Reverend Eugene Robinson, Bishop Eugene Robinson, Bishop? Yes.
Yes.
Who gave a speech at the last inaugural. Yes. After we complained.
A prayer.
At the commander-in-chief.
Not at the inaugural, but at that sort of celebration at the Lincoln Memorial.
Yes, at the inaugural weekend.
Yes.
That night, this week, there were two main balls sponsored by the administration. One of them was the Commander-in-Chief's Ball, which was the military-focused ball, and there were a number of same-sex military couples there in attendance. Absolutely. I was sorry, Barack and Michelle danced to Jennifer Hudson singing, and then a couple of military people came out, male and female, and danced with them, but only in opposite sex couples. I was sort of hoping they'd change partners.
Why not?
But they didn't. We'll save that for the next inaugural, I guess. But Here's an idea for the next 4 years. Now that the mainstream media has totally adopted us and all of this is on TV and the president is talking about us, what is the next level? Going after the closeted, hypocritical senators, we need a new campaign to start writing to Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell and all those people and Barbara Mikulski and saying, all right, it's time now.
It's not time for you to come out.
Get over yourselves. It's, we've made the world safe for you.
Right.
It's time to come out.
That Star of Silence of the Lambs can do it. You can do it.
Exactly. So if you're wondering what you can do and you live in the jurisdictions of any of these people who you suspect may
Urge
have a
them
life
to be
they're not
themselves.
talking about. Exactly.
Come on, South Carolina's got an openly African American senator, and the governor is the child of immigrants from South Asia.
Yeah.
You know, so come on, things are changing.
We'd like to think so. All right, so these cases are pending at the Supreme Court, and there will be oral arguments at the end of March on the 26th and 27th on the Prop 8 case from California about legalizing same-sex marriage in California and perhaps beyond, although probably not, and then the DOMA Section 3 case that considers whether the federal government can refuse to provide benefits for legally married same-sex couples. So what happened this week was the deadline for the right wing to submit its original briefs to the Supreme Court in both these cases.
Right. In other words, courts have struck this down. You say it should not be struck down. What's the reason? And the proponents of Prop 8 said, quote, our Constitution does not mandate the traditional gender definition of marriage, but neither does our Constitution condemn it. That's pretty weak.
I think that's a big switch. They've been arguing for years that the laws and the moral universe do mandate only opposite sex marriage.
Well, they say there's no historic reason for, quote, invalidating marriage as it has existed in California for virtually all of its history, because they did allow same-sex marriage for a while there, and as it was universally understood throughout the nation and the world. Well, tell that to places where you can marry multiple partners. Until just the last decade.
Slavery was historic for a long time, too.
And the subjugation of women.
Yeah.
And gay people. So there you have it.
Well, they're basically saying let the democratic process continue. If Prop 8 is going to be invalidated, let it be repealed by the voters rather than this decision made by the courts. And that's not a strong argument.
And that's similar to the argument being made by the House Republicans, who were the last people defending the Defense of Marriage Act, because the President of the United States is now the Justice Department is now in there opposing the Defense of Marriage Act. So in their brief, the House Republicans, first of all, they attacked Obama for abdicating his duty to defend DOMA's constitutionality. No,
he has no such responsibility.
When you take the oath, you swear to uphold the Constitution. And if you think it's unconstitutional, you're not supposed to defend it, okay? But,
exactly.
But then
enforce it maybe, but defend it, no.
Then they argue about national uniformity, but the thing is, there is no national uniformity. The national uniformity used to be the federal government recognizes all the marriages recognized by the states. States vary in who they recognize among heterosexual couples.
Exactly. They make this national uniformity of benefits argument as if that means that they should recognize only opposite-sex couples nationally. But the real national uniformity would be to recognize all legally married couples.
So then they get into arguments that you may be familiar with if you watched the show when New York City was making its arguments against same-sex marriage in 2005. Where they say, quote, there is a unique relationship between marriage and procreation that stems from marriage's origins as a means to address the tendency of opposite-sex relationships to produce unintended and unplanned offspring. This was an argument used by Bloomberg when he stopped us from getting married in 2005. Not Ann and me, but Then they said there's nothing irrational about declining to extend marriage to same-sex relationships, that whatever their other similarities to opposite-sex relationships simply do not share that same tendency. This is what they're left on. It's like they're hanging from
giving us medals for that, not keeping us from benefits. No, they say we have to have marriage with special rights for heterosexuals because otherwise they'd have all these illegitimate children.
Congress, likewise, could rationally decide to foster relationships in which children are raised by both of their biological parents.
Whoa, wait till they try to impose that on
But
people.
then they go after us on our relative power in the universe, and they say that we're one of the most influential, best connected, this is a quote, best funded and best organized interest groups in modern politics. So they don't need any help from the court. They can do this on their own.
We can't even get any heat in this studio.
But it's not just for the Gay USA show. At least I hope it's not.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Yeah, and
So well, this is a big deal because this is about what kind of scrutiny we're going to get from the court.
Exactly.
And they're saying we're doing fine.
yeah, and you won those votes in November. So what's your problem? Well, if you looked at the situation with gender or race or ethnicity at the time cases on those subjects came to the Supreme Court, you could certainly make the case that there was plenty of power for those groups of people.
well,
Certainly at least as much as we have now.
When the court got rid of the laws against interracial marriage, the country was about 80% against it.
Yes.
Including in northern states. It wasn't just the South. People were just against interracial marriage. And they said that the Constitution doesn't let you do that.
Well,
This is 19,
but it wasn't just about marriage. We're talking about
67.
rights in a larger context, and whether people had rights in a larger context that then applied to marriage.
Right.
Anyway, again, the BLAG people, the Bipartisan Legal Advisory Group, now up to $3 million in expenses to defend the Defense of Marriage Act. Also,
And no money to protect the Benghazi embassy.
also said, let the democratic process continue. Okay.
All right. But, shall we continue with
Sure.
some marriage news?
Sure.
Well, we did get some action in the Rhode Island House Judiciary Committee. They voted unanimously, 11-0, to send the bill to the floor of the House for a full vote. I don't know if that means everybody's for it, but they sent it to the floor.
And by the time you see this, the full House may have, in fact, approved marriage equality.
And David Cicilline, who is a congressman now, was in the General Assembly in 2001 when they first introduced this, and he got one vote, his own, when he proposed it.
Well, they're isolated now, and they don't want to be alone in the New England
Right.
states. But they still have a problem in the Senate because they have a great Democratic majority in the Senate, but the Senate leader is a woman who is a Democrat, a progressive Democrat, but against marriage equality.
How come?
Catholic.
Yeah, well, we have a Catholic governor, sort of. I'm not trying to put,
asserts
we have a Catholic governor who lives with his girlfriend.
Right. Well, Catholic parishioners are pro-marriage equality by even higher numbers than the general numbers.
Well, people who identify as Catholic.
Yes.
I don't know about people who go to parishioners who go to church.
Well, this woman asserts her Catholic membership as her reason for opposing marriage equality.
Okay.
But if she lets it come to a vote,
that would be nice.
we should win.
That would be nice.
All right, so we're following Rhode Island.
Okay.
Colorado is beginning debate on civil unions, which is the best they think they can do at the
Well,
moment.
they have an amendment against same-sex marriage there.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But Go Proud,
Yeah.
the gay Republican group, has now come out for civil same-sex marriage. Stop the presses.
Why were they against it before?
They didn't
Because
have they didn't have an opinion.
Well,
They were neutral.
Go Proud, and to a lesser extent, Log Cabin Republicans are sort of a man bites dog story.
Yes. The Campaign for Southern Equality, which we are now following with great excitement, showed up in Virginia last week, and 15 same-sex couples applied for and were denied marriage licenses in Virginia. They are traveling around the South doing these actions, and if you want to know more about them, check out the Campaign for Southern Equality.
Now, the Boeing Company, we've talked about this, there was a little dispute about whether they were going to grant pension survivor benefits to same-sex married couples levels equal to their straight counterparts. Well, they're going to do it now. It's a retreat for them because they were resistant to this, but they're in Washington State, where same-sex marriage is legal.
Yep. But the most exciting thing is the gay Super Bowl connection.
Yeah.
You may remember the Baltimore Ravens linebacker, Brendan Ayanbadejo.
And they are, he is on a team that's in the Super Bowl.
He's a linebacker for the Baltimore Ravens. And he became an advocate for marriage equality in the campaign in Maryland for marriage equality. He was raised by parents who were dorm monitors in a gay dorm in California, I think. He grew up around gay people. He came from a very progressive family.
Like Governor Patterson of New York.
Yeah. And he was a big proponent of marriage equality, and he talked about this openly, and he got a lot of pushback from some of his teammates, not all, and some people in Maryland. And that's when Chris Kluwe of the Minnesota Vikings got involved.
Defending him when he was attacked by a state senator.
Right. So, yes, Brendan was. So he has been outspoken. So the Ravens, who have come through the playoffs, I know you follow this intimately.
I did watch a little bit of it this weekend while I was catching up on the papers.
Okay, well, they are a wild
Surprised
card
to see
team.
the Patriots get blown out.
Well, they upset the Broncos first last week, and then they upset the Patriots this last weekend. And so they're going to the Super Bowl.
And the coaches of the two teams in the Super Bowl are brothers.
Yes.
Are they gay also?
You'll have to investigate
I don't know.
that. So Brendan goes home to Maryland after the game against the Patriots, and at 3:40 a.m.
He sends out a tweet to Brian Elner, who we know, who has worked on this same-sex marriage issue, and Michael Skolnick, who is the political director for Russell Simmons, and says, this is at 3:40 a.m., by the way. Is there anything I can do for marriage equality or anti-bullying over the next couple of weeks to harness this Super Bowl media? Because the thing is, the media get nothing to do for the next 2 weeks while they wait for this game to start, and they'll start writing about stuff like this.
They already are, because now they're writing about Brendan. And what is Brendan's goal in life, aside from pushing these issues? He wants to be invited on the Ellen DeGeneres show so he can dance and joke with Ellen. I suspect he's got that invitation already. But thank you, Brendan. That's terrific.
He's also calling it his Jerry Maguire email, meaning it's his inspiration in the middle of the night, if you ever saw that movie where he's going to, but the guy's already got a good head on his shoulders.
Well done.
Yes.
All right, so in addition to marriage news and marriage bills and civil unions bills advancing, there are still non-discrimination bills to be passed. We told you last week about Twin Falls, Idaho, adopting a non-discrimination act. Well, its sister city in Idaho, Lewiston, adopted a sexual orientation non-discrimination bill for
5-2
for hiring city employees.
The same thing in both cities. It's just about municipal employment.
Yeah.
So now you've got Lewiston, Twin Falls joined Boise, Sandpoint, Musco, and Caldwell in taking these steps.
In Puerto Rico, the legislature is considering a sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression non-discrimination bill that would cover employment, housing, and public accommodations. Believe it or not, we still need to pass these bills. Half the states don't have them, the federal government doesn't have them, and this is an ongoing campaign.
Pocatello, also in Idaho, considering it, so if you live out there, now's the time to get involved.
In Virginia, a Senate committee passed a sexual orientation non-discrimination bill for state employees, but there is no great hope that this is going to pass both houses of the legislature. It's expected to be killed in the House of Delegates, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yep.
And in Texas, in Waco, Texas, a straight female student at Baylor University, which is a pretty conservative university, was astonished to hear that gay people or transsexual people could be fired. And so she has started a campaign for Waco to pass a sexual orientation and gender identity and expression bill in Waco.
Not just gay people can be fired, but people who support gay rights. In Nashville, there's a music company there called Rocketown, where They fired this guy because he's a supporter of a group called Hostage Com. He wore their T-shirt which says, "I support same-sex marriage," and they fired him for wearing the shirt. So the people from Hostage Com are writing a big public letter and saying, we're never going to play Rocketown again, that venue, and we support this guy, and we hope he gets his job back. His name is Wes Breedwell. He's been there for 7 years, and he was discriminated just for standing up for us.
Levi Pine, a transgender man, has filed a discrimination complaint with the Illinois Department of Human Rights. He was using the King Spa and Sauna in Niles, Illinois, and the manager told him not to use the men's shower, which was completely inappropriate.
Where is he supposed to take his shower?
He was offered a
individual private shower.
Yeah,
this is what they end up doing in all these cases.
Well, offer them to everybody. And St. Francis Prep in Fresh Meadows, New York. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Fired a transsexual teacher, Mark Krolikowski.
Isn't Mark a child of God?
Mark is a child of God, has taught there for 30 years, highly rated, teaches music, social justice,
so they just sort of found out about this.
Yes, and the school told him this was worse than gay.
Well, let me just tell you, that would be an interesting case. I can't think of any Catholic doctrine that speaks against this. You know, I mean, that if he wants to bring a suit under the discrimination on the basis of transgender is illegal in the city of New York. So I think he's got
this is Fresh Meadows. Is that
Fresh Meadow?
Is that
it in Queens?
I don't know.
Sorry, we'll check on
Oh, a geographical problem. We had a geographical problem last week because we were talking about Wyoming having passed some good legislation or being a good place, and we said
the equality state.
Yeah, and we said, oh well, of course, because they elected Jeanette Rankin as the first woman to Congress.
And that's not true. She was from Montana.
Yes.
And she was elected for the, as I said, in 1916, and she voted against World War I, and then she got elected again for World War II to vote against that. The only vote against that. But
that is her when she was young and being elected to Congress. And that is her in the early 70s when I met her. She was still a pistol, still an activist, doing great work. And she died in 1973 at age 92.
And I think one of the reasons we were thinking of that, I'm not making excuses for us and our dotage here, but Wyoming allowed women to vote in the territory in 1869.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, one of the things Jeanette Rankin said when she voted against the wars is, as a woman, I can't go to war, this was true then, and I refuse to send anyone else.
Good for her. And let's also mourn the death of Dear Abby this last week at 94. She was a terrific supporter of the LGBT community with a sharp and funny tongue.
Yes, and a great supporter of ours. Maybe not from the absolute get-go, but she certainly, over the years, was a big supporter of gay people and gay rights and all that kind of stuff. The Times even used as a kicker what I consider one of her most famous columns, where this person writes in and says, Abby, you know, this couple moved in across the street. I thought they were father and son or brothers or something like that. Turns out they're a homosexual couple. What can we do to save our neighborhood? And she said, move.
Thank you, Abby. And that attitude has been carried on by her daughter, who's doing the column.
Her daughter does the column now.
And we also mourn the death of Michael Triplett, who was the president of the National Lesbian and Gay Journalists Association for just a few months. He was 48 years old. He worked for Bloomberg News, and he died of oral cancer, which he attributed to HPV, the human papilloma virus.
And you can get the HPV a lot of ways. I mean, it's not just orally, but to cause the oral cancer.
Well, I presume that you would contract it from performing oral sex.
I mean, it can be transmitted a lot of ways. I mean, if you get it in your system, you've got a virus in your system. But it does cause oral cancers.
Yes.
Yes.
But I think because of that direct transmission, women get cervical cancer because they have vaginal intercourse with men who transmit the virus to them.
We will get you more on this, but I mean...
Men and women can get it anally from intercourse, and it is transmitted sexually.
Right.
And that is why they're advising young men and women to have the vaccine against HPV. And we have advised gay men for years who are having anal intercourse to be tested.
Yes. I mean, he also never smoked and had never been more than a social drinker, he said, which is also sometimes associated with oral cancer. So his only risk was sexual transmission of this HPV virus.
Right. In California, an appeals court has said that the prosecution of 4 gay men in Palm Springs for public sex was not discrimination, which is pretty shocking given that they do not prosecute heterosexual people for public sex.
Absolutely.
They just give them warnings. And they conducted a sting and busted 19 gay men for public sex by entrapping them.
And the Catholic priest in Springfield who had to call 911 because he was handcuffed to his bed, I think.
He was in the rectory. I think he was.
Well, he was handcuffed.
Yeah.
He wasn't having sex at all, according to an investigation by Bishop Thomas John Poprocki of the Diocese of Springfield, Illinois. He was mortified by what happened. Well, no, we shouldn't make fun because
We don't know the real story.
We don't know the real story.
The parish priest is claiming that this was not sexual, that he was highly stressed.
Right.
And handcuffing himself was a coping mechanism.
With respect to diet, exercise, sleep, work hours, unreasonable personal, all this kind of stuff. So maybe
found fully clothed, no one else around, no drug or alcohol.
Right.
So
maybe it's true,
knows?
and it was obviously quite embarrassing for the guy.
On the other hand, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, Kevin Wallen, a close personal friend of former
Cardinal Egan of New York was his mentor. They used to go out all the time
to Broadway shows,
etc.
Well, Kevin Wallen has now been arrested because they've discovered he's a meth dealer. He was already suspended because he'd been found having sex in the rectory in the rectory with strange men.
Yeah.
That's how they described him.
He was very clever about his meth business. He opened up a porn business to launder the money for it. And
parishioners are not happy about all this.
Bereft. One of them said she was crying all day that evil had overtaken. Oh, man.
Did evil overtake Notre Dame when they covered up Manti Te'o's
Well, where are you on that right now? I mean, he's saying I was hoaxed. I told some lies because I was a little embarrassed that my girlfriend, I'd never met her.
Yeah.
But, well, wait a minute. I know somebody who had a relationship for months and months with someone online.
Yeah.
It can get pretty intense with Skyping and all that kind of...
They weren't Skyping.
Well, all right. But I'm just saying, people have relationships online.
Okay.
You know, people have pen pals.
Yes, they do.
They've had them for generations.
Okay. But neither he nor Notre Dame came clean when this hoax was revealed to them, and it was all in the build-up to the Heisman Trophy and the BCS championship game, and they didn't want to talk about it. And now people are saying, well, he had this made-up girlfriend because really he's gay.
People are saying that, but we don't know that either.
We don't know.
So,
and we have no gay angle on the Lance Armstrong story.
No.
But we're also not happy with Los Angeles Cardinal Mahoney, who's always been kind of sanctimonious about gay stuff. And
well, they were actually billing him in the Times story as one of the last relatively liberal cardinals, but he was not good on gay stuff. No, nobody is. You are not allowed to be. Although in international news we will talk about not a cardinal, but a priest who is.
And then there's this controversy that the Times wrote about in Georgia, where private religious schools that bar gay people or people who support gay people from attending high schools are getting tax-exempt money.
Well, they found a very clever way to fund private schooling, and that is people make these enormous donations, and the government makes donations to this fund that people can then access for private education, and it can go to discriminatory schools.
It doesn't strike me as unusual.
I mean, the federal government stepped in Bob Jones University because they didn't allow interracial dating, but Georgia seems to have no such concern, and they're saying, well, if you want to have an all-gay school, that's okay too. We'll fund that. That's what they say.
Divide everybody up into their own little corners.
Well.
And congratulations to the Twin Peaks Tavern in San Francisco, which in 1972 appears to be the first gay bar to have big picture windows. Everything before then, and still many to this day, are sort of dark places you can't see into or see out of, and they said, no, we want to be able to be open to the community.
I mean, that's the way I remember gay bars from my youth in New York, and I also remember there was a rampage in New York right before the AIDS crisis in 1980, where guys shot up a bunch of gay bars, and then they really closed off everything. But now you see big windows and gay bars.
Well, they were the first in '72, and the San Francisco Board of Supervisors has just named them a landmark because of that. But they also said that when they adopted this policy and put in these windows, they also had to announce a policy indoors of no touching, because people were still being arrested in 1972 in San Francisco.
David Rothenberg, who we had on the show, who's 80, I guess now, but when he was going to gay bars in the first, and even in the early 60s, he would talk to a guy and he'd go like this, and somebody would come over and say, "You're 86. He said, "I'm 27. Meaning, you're out, get out. We can't have that because it will get us closed down for violating the state liquor laws.
Well,
all right,
there you are.
And congratulations to, out there in Ogden, Utah, they formed a program called Safe and Sound Host Program to help bring back families together and match throwaway LGBT Mormon youth with welcoming Mormon families to give them shelter, kindness, and help. This is being run out of the Outreach Resource Center there.
Very sweet.
And how about those, there's this big story about how 30%, did we do this?
No, go ahead.
30% of the military commanders fired in the United States, fired over the last 8 years, lost their jobs because of sexually related offenses, including harassment, adultery, and improper relationships. I know they just let that big guy off the hook this week, Allen. But this is a huge problem, 30%.
As you say, those darned heterosexuals.
Yeah, and the Chuck Hagel saga continues. With this Use Your Mandate group.
I have to believe this is, again, the right wing going after him.
I guess so. They claim maybe not.
But they're not admitting who the donors are.
And we picked up another Democratic seat in the state of New York, where a representative, very progressive, named Kachik, very pro-gay and lesbian and bisexual and transgender. Up there her name is Cece Kachik, upstate, and she won her seat by 19 votes.
Congratulations.
But, except for the fact that we've got all these Democrats caucusing with Republicans, so the Democrats are not in control. International news?
Sure, before I freeze to death. In Vilnius, Lithuania, activists are arguing with the government over the place and route of the July Pride March. The government is bringing up the usual phony concerns about safety to try to get rid of the Pride March. We'll follow that as those discussions go along.
A Chinese court in Beijing, First Intermediate Court, has recommended that they do some legislation there to allow people who discover your spouse to be gay to get an annulment, not a divorce. You don't have that stigma. And
So you have a chance of marrying again instead of being a divorced
There's
person.
some complications around that, but that is certainly a recognition of a step
Well,
forward.
as someone said, if you want to improve this situation, how about legalizing same-sex marriage so that gay people don't marry opposite-sex partners in the first place?
They're talking about that. Well, we made that argument all the time. Yeah, go ahead.
In Honduras, a gay bar was raided by government troops or police, and a gay leader who was there, Eric Martinez, and 2 others were assaulted by the cops, arrested, released finally.
Dire.
The U.S. ambassador there issued a nice supportive statement.
All these anti-gay laws in Russia, they're now looking to nationalize them to, and it's to the point where, they talk about a guy who got a $16 fine for hooliganism for kissing his boyfriend. Well, if this bill passes the Russian parliament, he could get a $16,000 fine for a public kiss in Russia. And it's being pushed by the Russian Orthodox Church and by the corrupt government there. Peter Tatchell wrote us a note about how in Manchester, London, Northumbria, and the West Midlands, police are sending notices out and saying, we want to get your DNA if you were convicted of like sodomy 40 years ago. And you're going to be in a registry for this,
oh my God,
et cetera. And so he's trying to work with the government to make it stop.
Outrageous.
Because it's absolutely outrageous. So the police are saying, well, this other guy, he had something else. He had some other crime, like he, committed a petty theft when he was 17. So now he goes into a DNA base with sex offenders. Completely outrageous.
Sounds like Rudy Giuliani is over there.
But then on a positive side, there's the priest in Dublin who's they're working on defrocking him because he won't adhere to church orthodoxy on women's issues and contraception and homosexuality. But he also believes that, Jesus didn't start a priesthood of special people like this. He does. He's really attacking the basis of the priesthood, which he is one of.
I thought he wasn't allowed to do that.
Well, that's where they're fighting him.
Okay. AIDS news. Sunday, we had sort of an informal ACT UP reunion at a memorial service for Spencer Cox, a wonderful activist who died too young at 44, probably because he stopped taking his medications for HIV. And here's the program for the memorial was
a playbill.
A playbill because he was an actor and very theatrically attuned.
And you said this memorial service might end up online, and
it will. And I'll give you the link when it happens. His brother got up and spoke and was hysterically funny. His mother standing there too. And then a parade of friends and activists through the years, and it was sad because it reminded me of all the memorials 25 years ago, and this was really a sort of blast from the past in that way. But it was loving and warm and sad and angry and everything that we used to do, and 200 or 300 people there, and all the old gang, and quite an event.
Right.
Poor Spencer Cox.
Right. Well,
but they also handed out something he'd written about how to read games to play when you have HIV. Go to Uncle Charlie's, sit next to a sweater fag, make eye contact, cough. Wait 30 seconds, cough again. Smile at him, say, it's nothing, just a little cough. Wait 3 minutes, cough again. Compare symptoms with an HIV-positive friend. Try to decide if you've got cryptococcal meningitis or just a headache. Accuse him of giving you PCP. Make up gross symptoms.
It's good that he could laugh because things were pretty desperate in those days.
Absolutely.
And I'm not going to say they're going to get desperate again, but there is this new study that says almost half of gay men studied who use Grindr, Scruff, Manhunt, and Growler to meet sexual partners are not using condoms. The interesting thing is 81% know that how HIV is transmitted, exactly how it's transmitted. A vast majority consider barebacking dangerous and believe barebackers know the risks, but 47% admitted to barebacking always, often, or sometimes.
They say they hate condoms.
They don't
or
feel
they're,
good.
They're having sex impulsively. They're on drugs and alcohol. There are always reasons.
And part of it is if I insist you use a condom, then I'm accusing you of being positive, or you're going to think that I'm positive. So rather than deal with this discomfort, people are putting themselves at risk again. And, again, as we've told you, it is harder to transmit the virus these days because virus is suppressed by the drugs. People who have it, take the drugs, are, many of them becoming undetectable, that kind of stuff. So a single encounter is less risky than it used to be, but it's still risky. And we've got to talk about. We should probably do a show on this. Where we talk about how are people going to be safe and make themselves safe. How do people make themselves safe?
How do people make decisions around any of this? Well, a couple of studies out of Texas and London have found, as others have, that early treatment when you are HIV infected slows the progression of HIV and actually helps boost your immune system, and that therefore early treatment, in addition to just suppressing the virus so you're less infectious, for instance, can actually keep you healthier longer in ways.
So it's a big argument for early treatment.
Yeah, it's now, which remains a controversy.
How does Sean Strub feel about that?
Well, exactly.
He's usually the naysayer.
Well, you can read more about this study in the January 17th edition of the New England Journal of Medicine, which is where it's published. People continue to raise some questions about this story of Uncle Poodle on the Honey Boo Boo show and whether
he's gay.
His story of being infected by someone who he then had prosecuted is real. A lot of unanswered questions there.
Right.
People are continuing to look into it.
But the media is more concerned whether Beyonce pre-recorded her national anthem.
Exactly.
All right. On to entertainment news. We both saw Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. This is written by a homosexual named Tennessee Williams, and it's got a gay theme for sure, a big one.
Yep.
And I don't know.
Not so emphasized in the movie version. Didn't they sort of homogenize that in the movie version?
I'd have to go back.
I think, in fact, the
With
movie...
Elizabeth Taylor and Paul Newman.
There was a lot of
Burl
talk
Ives.
of, it's a married couple, they're unhappy, they're not having sex, he's boozing it up, and she says he, was too close to his dead friend Skipper.
His friend Skipper, who not only killed himself, but who had sex with Maggie before he died.
Yes. So in the play, as written, the implication is that Brick was smitten with Skipper, and that's why he's not having sex with Maggie, and he's basically drinking himself to death.
And there's a lot of talk about it in the play.
Yes,
Not
not so much in the movie.
But this production, directed by Rob Ashford, who I have enjoyed his work, and both in big musicals and things he's done at the Donmar Warehouse in London, little plays, terrific. It really didn't work for me, and I don't think Scarlett Johansson, who I thought was terrific in View from the Bridge, Arthur Miller, which she won the Tony for, wasn't quite right for this role.
Have I been saying Scarlett Johansson when it's Johansson?
I don't know.
It could be either. Anyway, yeah, I thought she was too harsh. Elizabeth Taylor is unique, and it's hard to replace her, but Scarlett just didn't have the sexiness.
And she's probably bringing a lot of people to Broadway. And Benjamin Walker, who had been in Bloody Andrew Jackson, plays Brick. And Kieran Hines is Big Daddy.
Yeah, I didn't think he was right for it either.
Well,
Hilton Knowles didn't like it either in the
he did not.
New Yorker.
So we're not recommending it, but
His review starts, "The Theater Critics Hospital is a nice place to recover from the trauma that is Rob Ashford's staging of Tennessee Williams."
Well.
But I like the play. That's what going to the performance reminded me. I liked the play. I didn't like the production, but I liked the play.
Did you know that the director of the Philadelphia Orchestra, Yannick Nezit-Seguin, is out gay?
Yes.
Yes, you did. I didn't know that. Somebody had to point that out to me.
Okay.
Let's see. All right, I mentioned that the top grossing, hello, come in. The second top grossing documentary of 2012 was Bully.
Yeah.
Of course, the first one, as you said, was 2016, Obama's America by, what's his name?
I don't know.
You know, the right-wing guy.
Yeah.
Dinesh Souza, how's that?
Thank
it
you.
came
Very,
to me.
very good.
And I see they're going to make a movie of a David Sedaris essay,
Yes.
COG, starring the out-gay Jonathan Groff and the out-gay Dennis O'Hare.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, I guess it will be Jonathan, will be playing Sedaris, is that, you think?
And it's evidently the first of David Sedaris's writings that is being made into a movie.
He doesn't like his things being made into movies.
Well.
But apparently, having given permission to this guy,
Yeah.
this young guy who makes films, he has nothing to do with the script, nothing to do with the movie.
They asked him to, and he said, no, I don't.
Let's just
I
see
don't
what
wanna get
happens.
Involved in that. Well, you know, a lot of movies are not. I don't blame him for being a little leery of Hollywood. Have you seen all the Oscar-nominated movies by now?
No, not all of them.
Yeah.
I'm a SAG-AFTRA voter. I've seen most of them. Yeah,
I've seen more than I usually see.
I am leaning towards Argo.
I liked Argo a lot.
I like Lincoln, of
I
course.
loved Lincoln.
And
Loved
I certainly think Daniel Day-Lewis will win Best Actor.
I saw Zero Dark 30 and was a little disappointed
Yeah?
in it. Have you seen it?
Nope.
It's, first of all, the torture is much milder than I expected. I don't mean I was disappointed by that, but I was surprised that it seemed...
Of all the hullabaloo.
Yes,
well, look,
exactly.
What's basically happening is politics.
Yes.
Films attacking other films for their
Yes.
themes, the way they were made, to try to downgrade them, and all that kind of stuff.
But I thought it was just, you know, I like Jessica Chastain, and the last 20 minutes when they go after Osama bin Laden is exciting. But otherwise, it's just sort of tedious and takes too long to get to that and sort of skips over
We're very
the
impatient.
surface. I guess so. Well, I loved Lincoln. I reveled in the length and depth of Lincoln.
Written by out-gay Tony Kushner, who is himself nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay at the Academy Awards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where I hope he doesn't have to face Quentin Tarantino, who won the Golden Globe. I saw Django. I thought that was a cartoon.
Django Unchained.
Cartoon.
Well, and what else from Sundance? Did we talk about the...
Now, there is a great new film, evidently, that premiered at Sundance this last week called God Loves Uganda, which is all about the anti-gay stuff going on there and the American preachers who went over and started all this.
It's really about the rise of evangelical Christianity.
Yes.
And it's interesting to read this week that they think evangelical Christianity is sort of on the wane in this country because young people cannot accept how doctrinaire it is, just like us Catholics years ago.
But this is the
this
is what we saw. We saw them go to Africa and Eastern Europe and Russia and whatever because they were failing in this country or going downhill. And I've always been concerned that they were going there to find a way to bring it back here.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, the Anglican Church went to Africa, and it's the biggest Anglican dioceses are in Nigeria.
Right, and they're controlling a lot of what the Anglican Church does overall.
Right. You're not going to like an Anglican bishop this week with your outfit, I think.
I'm freezing, but thank heavens we're done, and we can go home now to our warm homes.
Yay.
All right.
Thanks for being with us.
We'll see you next week.
Hope you're warm wherever you are.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.